So we're starting with name that moon phase. We're going to do this together. You're going to cut out the rectangle, leave the title on, and then we're going to glue it down to the piece of cardstock. There's no folding in this activity. All right, we're just going to cut it out smaller and then glue it down to our piece of cardstock. So then you end up with something that looks like this. I'm very practiced. This is the third one I've made today. So then you're going to glue and put it down on your piece of cardstock. Either one. We're going to use the back of this for another one though. So, all right, so it's going to look like this then. Okay, so it will be sideways, horizontal, hot dog, or hamburger. This is hamburger. All right, so it's going to be hamburger. See, I don't get that. See, because hot dogs are short and hamburgers are tall. But whatever. This is, well, see, yeah, whatever. This is called horizontal when we're in 8th grade. Horizontal, horizontal. Okay. Now, yeah, you're gluing on the paper. Yeah. Okay, now, we are going to label and color these together, starting with the new moon phase. So number 1, underneath the picture, there is a line. And on that line, you are going to write new moon. We are going to start with the new moon phase, and we will go through all of the different ones until we reach number 8, and then the cycle would continue by going back to number 1 again. It is the new moon phase. You may follow along by opening your packets to pages 156 and 157. The phases are shown there. I'm actually going backwards from what it looks like on the packet, but I'm starting with new moon, so that's the way I'm going. Somebody borrowed my pen last period and didn't give it back. All right, so number 2 after new moon, and we're going to talk all about these when we color them, but let's just get them all labeled. So number 2 after the new moon is going to be, the new moon's completely in shadow, at least the side that we see. Please remember that out in space, the moon is always half lit up, but we don't see half of it lit up always, okay? Sometimes we see a quarter of it, sometimes we see the full half that's lit, sometimes we see the full half that's in shadow. But in space, if you were out in space observing the moon, you would not see phases, you would just see it always half lit. The half that faces the sun is always lit up, the half that faces away from the sun is always dark or in shadow. But because it orbits the Earth as we are moving around the sun, we see it from a different perspective here on the Earth. So we see it go through, sometimes it's in shadow, sometimes part of it's in shadow, sometimes none of it's in shadow. We see it differently, okay? So we're going to start with the new moon. Now, as we move from new moon through the cycle, it's now going to go from complete shadow to getting a little bit lighter. Now, when something is getting more and more or bigger, we call that waxing. So our first phase, number 2, is going to be a waxing crescent. Because the crescent shape is just a little sliver of the moon. And as it's getting bigger and bigger, it's going to be a crescent, waxing crescent, waxing crescent, waxing crescent, until half of the moon, to us, appears to be lit and the other half is in shadow. When we have half lit to us and half shadow to us, that is called the first quarter. That's number 3. First quarter. So far we have new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter. We have not drawn any pictures yet because I'm going to teach you how to remember which side should be the side that's lit up depending on if it's waxing or waning, okay? Now, after we see the first quarter, which is half in shadow, half in darkness, we now are going to see it still waxing, getting more and more light. But now it's going to be bigger than half to us, and we call that a gibbous. So it's going to be called a waxing gibbous. Gibbous. Waxing gibbous. Gibbous. So we've got new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous. Have not drawn any pictures yet. The next thing that's going to happen is it's going to continue to wax until it is completely full, which we call the full moon, okay? So number 5 will be the full moon. That is when, to us, we are seeing the entire side lit. After the full moon, it's now going to start to get smaller and smaller, or less and less light, and we call that waning. So it's going to go from the full moon, and it's going to get just a little bit smaller, and we're going to call that a waning gibbous. So number 6 is waning gibbous. It's W-A-N-I-N-G, and then gibbous is still spelled G-I-B-B-O-U-S. So waning gibbous. Okay, waning gibbous. Now number 7 is going to be when it gets to the point where half is light and half is dark. It's not the first quarter though this time. It's going to be the third quarter, okay? Third quarter. This is when we're getting closer to a new moon instead of heading toward a full moon. So third quarter for number 7. Now it's going to continue to get smaller and smaller, or less and less light. So it's going to be called a waning. And now that we're less than half, it's going to be called a crescent again. So a waning crescent for number 8. Waning crescent. Okay. And then the cycle would start over again. It'll become a new moon. And then it will go through all the phases again. Waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, waning crescent, back to the new moon. Okay? Now, because the new moon is in between the earth and the sun. So if you guys are the sun and I am the earth, the moon will be in between us, which means that what I'm going to see is the shadow part of the moon. And actually, I'm not going to see it at all because that's out during the day when the sun is out. And we don't see that unless there's an eclipse, which there was in August, remember? So I'm going to take my black crayon, and if you have a black crayon or a colored pencil, I told you could use also, you're going to color the whole circle black for the new moon, right? And that will indicate that it's completely in shadow. So the black is going to indicate shadow, and the yellow will indicate sunlight shining on it, okay? So for the new moon, it's going to look like this, completely in shadow. Now, when we start to add the sunlight, we need to remember that the side of the moon that's lit up is going to be different depending on whether the moon is waxing or waning. And this is where I'm going to get really geeked out on you. When I was, I don't know, little, I learned the phases of the moon from the Karate Kid. And I can't remember what year the Karate Kid came out. I think it was somewhere around 84, 85. I'd have been in 5th grade, I think. But the first thing that Mr. Miyagi taught him was wax on, wax off. Right. Okay. Now, and Mr. Miyagi was very particular about which hand he used to do which. Wax on was with the right hand, and wax off was with the left. And eventually, the kid got pretty upset about the fact he was doing all these chores, and then Mr. Miyagi says, oh, look, do wax on. And it was like this, and then like this, and he's like doing all these things, right? And he's like, oh my God, he's been teaching me karate all along. Well, anyway, for me, I'm a geek. I wasn't learning karate. I was learning the phases of the moon. When the moon is waxing, getting brighter, getting more sunlight, the right side of the sun is lit up. Wax on, folks. Wax on. The right side of the moon will always be lit up when it's waxing. Well, remember that because Mr. Miyagi taught you that wax on is with your right hand. Wax on, wax off. Now, wax off is not what we would call the moon. We don't say it's a wax off gibbous, right? But we say it's a waning gibbous. Well, if it's not waxing, then it's waning. So wax on, wax off, or waning. Okay? Now, we'll go outside, and my kids, if there's a moon out, they'll say, oh, Mommy, is it waxing or waning? Because, yeah, my kids are geeks because I teach them things like that. But I haven't taught them the wax on, wax off trick yet. So they'll say, Mommy, is it waxing or waning? And I'll look up at the moon, and in my head I go, wax on, wax off. And I'm like, oh, it's waxing. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. How do you know? I'm like, it's magic. I just know because it's magic. I'm so smart. Someday I'm going to tell them. Someday I'll tell them the wax on, wax off trick, and then they will not think I'm a god. They will know that I am just a regular mother, but that's okay. So for waxing crescent, wax on, wax off, which side does the crescent go on? The right side, yes. So we're going to draw a crescent in yellow, and that's just going to be less than half. Put the curve in, all right? Don't draw a straight line there. It looks weird. I had somebody do that today, I'm telling you. She brought up her paper and said, does this look all right? They were all straight lines. No, that does not look right. The moon does never look like that. Maybe if the Earth was a cube, I don't know. Or no, I guess it's not, because the Earth, it's not the Earth's shadow that's on there. But anyway, I guess it would look like that during an eclipse. But. So you're going to color it like that. As long as it's less than half, it's okay, because your first quarter is going to be a straight down line. Yes. Whatever color you can find is fine. Something dark and something lighter will work if you don't have yellow and black. How could I not have yellow and black though? This is Steelers country, right? All right. Now, the first quarter is going to be where half of the moon, we see half of it in shadow and we see half of it light. Which half is going to be the side that's lit up? Wax on, wax off. We're still waxing. We're still getting bigger all the way to the full moon. It's going to be waxing. So yes, we want the right side. So now you can draw a straight line and color one half. You're going to color the right half yellow or your lighter color. The right half. And then the left half is going to be in shadow, so you're going to color that with your darker color or black. So it'll look like that. You've got straight lines for the top ones there. All right. All right, now a waxing gibbous is going to be where more than half of the moon is lit up, okay? Which half is lit up for waxing? The right side, wax on, wax off. All right, so color more than half, give it a curve at the other side where you're going to add the shadow. The shadow should be kind of a crescent shape, okay? so this one should look like that. Now, the next phase is the full moon. The side that we see is completely lit. So we're going to color that one our lighter color, either yellow or whatever color you're using to indicate light. It's all yellow. So there's our full moon. Now, starting with the full moon as we head back toward the new moon part of the cycle, we are now going to be in the waning phase, where we are going to have less and less light. So the next phase is our waning gibbous, but remember it's waning, so which side of the moon should be light? The left side, right? Wax on, wax off, so the left side gets the gibbous. And then the right side gets the shadow. And it's gonna wane and wane and wane until we see half of it lit up. So that's our waning gibbous. It's gonna continue to wane and be a waning gibbous until the next part where it is gonna be half lit and half shadow. It's not the first quarter because now we're waning instead of waxing. It's called the third quarter, which we've already labeled. But which side should be the lit side? So we're still waning, so it's still the left side. So go and draw half the left side. The left half is going to be colored in our lighter color or yellow. And then the right half is going to be in the darker color or black. And that is our third quarter moon. It looks like that. Okay. Now, our final phase before heading back to the new moon is the waning crescent. Again, it's waning. So which side should the crescent shape be on? The left, right. So we're going to make the crescent shape with our lighter color on the left. And then the rest of the moon is going to be in shadow, so use the dark color. And it's going to look like that. Now at the bottom, I'm actually going to write on here, wax on, wax off. Wax on is my right, wax off is my left. So I wrote that at the bottom. And that will help me to remember. It has helped me remember since I was at least your age. Not if you liked the Karate Kid. I did. I think, well, the super old one is the one that I grew up with. No, well, that's what I'm talking about. All right, now. Please get out the one that's called Moon Phase Basics. I'm going to cut the sides off of mine, but I'm going to leave the top and bottom. I find it easier to glue it when it's all one piece. This is just like gravity though, and just like the rotation and revolution one, you're going to make little doorways. This is the moon phase basics. But instead of 4 doorways like those ones had, this one's going to have 6 doorways. And since I'm not cutting the whole thing out, I'm going to fold it just a little bit so that I can make a little cut in the middle, and then I can cut without having to poke through it. So I'm going to cut up the center, and then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to cut down to the bottom, and then I'm going to make my little doorways. Do not cut past the dashed lines. The dashed lines are where we fold. Guys, come on now. So the way that I like to do this is I cut it out so that it is all sort of stuck together, and then I just put the glue all the way around the edge. We are going to glue it to the back of the Name That Phases card. So it's going to go on the back of this, okay? However you want. Think about where you're going to hole punch it to put it in your folder, and then flip it however way you want it then, okay? So then I'm going to glue all the way around the edges. Do not glue on the little doorways or they won't open like little doors. So then it will look like this when you're done, and you will then fold it on the dashed lines to make little doorways, and you will answer the questions underneath. So the questions say, describe what the term waxing means, which we were just going over. Describe what the term waning means. Describe the light on a waxing moon. So is the light getting bigger and bigger or smaller and smaller? The opposite then, describe the light on a waning moon. Then describe a crescent shape and draw one, and then describe a gibbous shape and draw one, okay? So you will do that. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to show you the instructions to do the other one, and then I'll set you free to actually do these other ones. So now the other one is the lunar phase vocabulary. We're going to put that on its own sheet of cardstock. So that's this one. Now generally I don't cut off my titles, but this one you do have to, or you have to be kind of creative about how you cut it so that you don't end up with it upside down. Now you really just need to cut it out. So cut the whole rectangle that contains the words, and then that big empty space on the left side. Yeah, it's not going to work. You'd have to keep it attached and then glue it down, and then cut the other stuff out later. But so then you end up with this. I have found at this point it is easier to fold it in half on the dotted line so that the words are facing you like this. And then cut each of the solid lines in between each of the words. So lunar cycle, and then waxing, and then waning, and crescent, and gibbous, and then full moon. So you're cutting them so that no, the other way. Fold it the other way. They should be on the front. Yeah. They should be on the front. When you fold it, they should be what you're looking at, okay? And then you're going to cut each word apart. Now, when you have them all cut, it's gonna sort of look like this. They're gonna stick open a bit. That's okay. You're gonna take the back and you are going to put glue on the entire back. Okay, then I'm gonna take my title that I cut off and I'm gonna glue it at the top. And don't. Do whatever you want. It's yours. All right, now, what you will do now that you have this all put together, you will take, and as you lift up each of the words, you're going to put the definition underneath that. So lunar cycle is as the moon orbits the earth, it goes through all of the 8 phases. That's a cycle. It goes back then to number 1 and repeats over again, right? Waxing means to get bigger, or in this case, get brighter. Waning means to get smaller, or in this case, get dimmer. The crescent is smaller than half. A gibbous is bigger than half. A full moon is when the moon is completely lit. First quarter is when the right half is lit. Third quarter is when the left half is lit. You're going to go through those, write the definitions under it, hole punch it, and put it in your folder. Then go back and do this one, hole punch it, and put it in your folder, okay? And then when you're done, it'll be in your folder. I'm not sure yet, but for now, you're going to keep it in your folder. So when it's in your folder, it'll go behind your seasons. So there it is there, okay? And then there's the moon phase basics, and then there's your name that phase, okay? Any questions? I meant about the project. All right, folks, get to work.